1978, Fran and I got in our car and we drove. I was a county prosecutor then. We drove to Columbus and asked this guy by the name of John Kasich, who I'd never met before, how in the world did you win? He had beaten an incumbent. And I was trying to do the same thing. I was a county prosecutor. I was trying to run for state senate. And I said, how do you do it? I remember sitting in his office in the annex of the State House and talking about his ideas about what he did and maybe what we could do. We served together in the state senate. We served together in the United States Congress. And I must tell you a secret. It's a secret because no one can remember it. But John Kasich endorsed me for governor. And I endorsed John Kasich at a separate period of time for president. And neither one turned out very well.
Turned out perfect.
Neither one turned out. So far, neither one of us has made those goals, but who knows, future. But that's our background. So he's my friend, someone who we have worked with very, very closely. Attorney General's office. I'm his lawyer. But we work together on a lot of different things. And Governor, thank you very much for being here. I think it's very important. It sends, I think, the right signal that the Governor of the state of Ohio is here today to help kick this off and kind of set the tone for this cooperation that we want to have among all the agencies in the state. So, Governor, thank you very much.
Exactly the job he needed to be in for 1,000 years here, the Attorney General of Ohio. He's an incredible guy, an incredible family man, and crime fighter, and lawyer, and the whole kit and caboodle, and he came up with this idea, and it's a great one. How about giving him a round of applause for him? Let me just say a couple of things. First of all, I foremost want to thank you for sticking your lives on the line. That's a huge deal, and you don't always get thanked, but look, I've got two 12-year-olds and a wife, and I have a detail too, and I know how hard they work, and I spend a lot of time at the academy up there working out with the troopers, and you just really get to understand the challenges and the commitment, and I want to just thank you as a human being, one to another. Secondly, we do have some challenges. I mostly agree with Mike on these issues, but let me just tell you, I had a meeting with the Buckeye Sheriff's Association the other day, and Colonel Charles, you know Colonel Charles, he's the old dog over here sitting on the end. He's a smart, tough, really good guy. And I said, look, why don't we stop the war between the sheriffs and the patrol? And why don't we get a group together, and you can go down and use the governor's residence. I'll show up for a while, then we'll lock the doors, and then you guys can fight it out and then come out with a solution to these problems. And I told Bill Batchelor last night that I've asked the patrol and the sheriffs to get together to resolve their problems. And he said, well, that would take a miracle. But, you know, we understand, and there's issues on both sides. You know, the sheriffs have their issues, the patrol have their issues. But, I mean, what two great assets, right? The county sheriffs and the highway patrol. You know, I know the patrol really well because I know how elite they are. And we've stripped the politics out of that place. I mean, it was getting pretty bad up there. I don't think there's a place for politics in law enforcement. You are a law enforcement guy and woman, you run your stuff and keep the politicians out of it, the same way the military ought to function. The military reports to the civilians, but don't put the civilian politicians in the middle of law enforcement. And so I'm very optimistic with the leadership of John Bourne and the Buckeye Sheriff's Association. Bob been there about 40 years, longer than DeWine and I have known each other. We're going to sit down and we're going to work this out. And we're seeing more of it in Ohio, by the way. More cooperation between people who didn't cooperate before. And that's what I think we have to do. Pull together as a state. That's why the state's doing much better. Gary Moore is here. I hope you all get to meet him. Gary's the leader in prison reform in America. You know, we've reduced the recidivism rate, we've reduced the population in the prisons, and we've committed to this process of sentencing reform and changing collateral sanctions. And we do that, one is you don't want to stick 14,000 people in a prison for less than a year and put them next to a murderer, a rapist, or a drug dealer and then release them and think you did a great job. That's what happened, believe it or not. So Gary created a program on sentencing reform. It passed the legislature. Mike was very involved in this. And think about this. We had the prosecutors, the judges, and everybody in the room. Then collateral sanctions, you know, is amazing, isn't it? You're a kid and you receive stolen property. You're charged with a felony, and for the rest of your life, you can't cut hair, you can't drive a truck. I mean, it's nuts. I don't know if any of you knew this, but we went about that, and we got the left and the right, and we figured out how to move through that process so people can get jobs once they pay back to the public what it is they owe. And so I hope you all get to know Gary. Now, we got an issue because Gary's doing the prisons, and then we've got the sheriffs, and they've got problems with their jails, and how do we work all this out? Well, we're going to sit down and we're going to try to figure it out. Tracy Plouk is here. Tracy's, this would be unusual to have her in a meeting on crime, but she runs the Department of Mental Health. And we know, tragically, how many people can find themselves in jail because of severe mental health issues. And what we can do locally to make sure that people who have severe mental health issues can get the prescriptions that they need as best as we can, the medication that they need to keep them from having to commit a crime, which in many cases probably don't even know they're doing. And the other day we talked to John Martin, who runs the Department of Developmental Disabilities, and we talk about people who are severely disabled who commit crimes and end up in jail. I mean, these are challenges we have to face. Easy to sweep them under the rug, because sometimes there are people who live in the shadows of our society, but we're not going to sweep them under the rug. And we're not going to ignore problems, legitimate problems that are out there. And we understand you have issues about funding. Well, we'll see what the casinos produce, and can we do more sharing of all of our services? It's what we have to do, because the state is not flush with money, just not a fact. So we got to work together. Mike mentioned some issues. You know, I don't think we really were serious about fighting prescription drug abuse, Mike, till we got in. I don't believe it. Couldn't pass any legislation. This stuff sat in a corner. And, you know, Mike and I both met these women from Southern Ohio. And, you know, their kids, the football player goes to a party, drug abuse, you know, their pills in the bowl, and the next thing you know, the kid's dead. These women, you want to move the world, get a woman, chief. You know, that's the way it works. And we got this legislation through. We're shutting down pill mills. Mike is very involved in this with the Bureau of Workers' Comp and across the board. And many of you were involved in the raids. And we're not going to let up on this. And in fact, I'm told through the Bureau of Workers' Comp, we're actually down 1 million prescriptions, 1 million doses as a result of the efforts that have been made. So we're making progress, but it's sort of like spitting in the ocean, isn't it, when we look at the problem of drug abuse. And I've been aware of it for a long time, but I never understood the scale of drug abuse. So now we have the patrol working with the sheriffs and the local law enforcement to disrupt. You know those signs that are up there that say, if you're a drug dealer, we're going to throw you in jail? I came up with that idea. I said, put the darn signs up. Scare the living daylights out of these people who want to traffic through the state of Ohio. We have a long way to go on this, but you know, I think we're making progress. And the reports I get is that more and more of this trafficking is moving away from Ohio. And that doesn't solve the problem nationally, but we're here to help Ohio. And Frank, it's just such a tough problem.